Good afternoon. You guys hear me okay, or do you want me to use the mic? Okay, all right. They can hear me just fine, because I'm gonna shout really loud. They might be deaf, I don't know. Okay, I retooled this presentation last night. So we're gonna all discover whether I did it correctly or not. Yeah, so for those of you who have not met me yet, welcome to the Western Association of District Employees training. This is number 26 for me. So they've been going for quite a long time. It's about the 23rd, 24th, I think, here at Sydney Lake. So just real quick, a little bit of background about that. The very first couple of annual, summer trainings that we did, and there was literally like 17 or 18 people in the room. That was it for across the state. It was a one-day training in Ellensburg at Washington University. I, at the time, was working for the FinTech kind of conservation district in Ellensburg, and I got to the office the morning of the training because it was one day. It was afternoon. It was a 1 to like 5 minutes. And the secretary who worked there, she said, "Craig, you need to go to this meeting." And I said, "What's this meeting?" She goes, "I don't know, but you need to go." And I was like, "Okay, I don't know anything. I'm 22 years old. I'm an idiot." So I showed up. And there were people there like Tom Salter, who you heard talk. He was the manager of the Ferry Conservation District at the time. Let's see, I think was Dawn there. I heard Dawn was there. But there was a couple of other employees that are still around today. Vicky at Spokane City, she was there, and a couple of others. Anyways, talk about what are the things that districts are having to face and deal with. And then we came back the next year, and it was an afternoon and the next morning. We had an overnight, and people got a great wonderful pleasure of staying in a dorm at Central Washington University. It's like, I thought I was done with college. Now I get to go back in the dorm. By the way, Central, we're in June, July. No air conditioning, none. Yeah, it sucked. Right. So anyway. Long story short, a couple of years later, we had transitioned into this basically a very similar format to what we have today. There was, I think, 3 tracks. There was a managed track, an administrative track, and a technical track. That was as far as we could break apart. And one of the members of the State Conservation Commission was in attendance because had heard about this training. What are you guys looking up to and everything else? And she just fell in love with all of us teaching each other. We were learning from each other on how to do this. And so she decided to have a conversation with her good friend, a wonderful woman named Harriet Bull. And if you don't know who that is, go down into the main lobby down here and look up on the wall. There's a painting of a gray-haired woman, very, very grandmotherly. That's Harriet Bull. She is of the Bullitt Foundation fame. And she owned this property and was in the process of transitioning it into a conference center. It used to be a youth camp way back in the day. If you go back behind where the bathrooms are here in this building, you can see little placards from those days when it was a YMCA camp. Anyways, so from the State Conservation Commission, talked to her friend Harriet Bullitt, said, these people are looking for a place to have training and everything. I think, it'd be great if we could help them out. So we got invited to come here. And that first couple of years, we shared our time here with youth music camps and other programs. So there was us walking around and talking about conservation district stuff, and there was, teenage kids walking around and talking about playing tubas and marching lines, and also the conversation in line for food were glorious. They were hilarious. But we learned a lot from each other, and it was a lot of fun. Anyways, fast forward a couple of years, and our numbers were growing, and they started offering us an exclusive use contract, which basically means from noon on Monday to noon on Wednesday, the facility is off. That doesn't mean we get to just run rampant, but we don't have to share food lines or anything with everybody else. And you don't have to worry about, well, is that food and water that's set for the water refreshments? Is that for us or that other? It's for us. We can have. But also of note was Vim Wright had had really recommended that Harry make sure that we get a little bit. So, I don't know if any of you know how much was paid for you to come here. I believe it's $500. So for $500, you get all of the training. You get 2 nights lodging. Yeah, you got a room with somebody. So, you know, that part's a little bit, you know, that might be a little bit new for some of you, but it's really not as bad as you might think. And you also get your food experience. A similar 3-day event for the State Association of Conservation Districts. It'll be around $500 or $600 for registration, and that does not include food or lodging. We get a pretty damn good deal. So appreciate what you have here. I'm not saying that to try and be like, you know, big mean dad up here and everything else. Trying to explain a little bit of the history and that a lot of people have been putting in a lot of effort to try and bring this program to you. It is wonderful to see all of these bright, shiny new faces, none of whom, well, about 3, particularly I recognize. He's the newest employee of all. He's the biggest kid of all. He and I, yeah, we're brothers. But anyways, because for many years it would be, you know, 10 new employees, 15 was a big number. This is not quite the biggest. Last year was the biggest number I'd ever seen. This room was nearly full. It scared the bejeebers out. But it is wonderful to have some new folks coming into conservation districts and picking up and carrying us to the next level. We've done great work and we continue to do great work, and we're going to continue to try and kick ass. We need your help. And so we want to help set you up on the right foot to get there and to make sure that you have the best possible framework from which to build your time with conservation districts with. So with that, we're going to find out, did you know it said on? Did I renew? Right again. Right again. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So big part of what I was trying to cover today, and I'm going to cover a lot of slides. I was listening out there to the previous presentation. For those of you that were, I'm going to violate about half the rules, so I apologize. This needs a major upgrade for this presentation, but I'll do my best to try and move us right along. So I want to give you a little bit of background of the history of conservation districts and, you know, kind of what district's role is in the community. What's our purpose? What's the conservation district? You know, what are all of our authorities, which is huge in the rules of government. Districts have probably the widest ranging, we do have the widest ranging authorities probably in the state of Washington when compared to other natural resources. We can do more than any other agency, which is probably a correlation why we're given less for funding. I don't know what, but anyways. Like who are some of the other key players that you'll hear names and acronyms and all sorts of stuff thrown out. I want to try and at least start to set the stage for who they are, how they interact, how they impact our daily work. Okay. All right, so that vocabulary, I'm sure all of you have heard of RCW 8908, right? Raise your hand if you have not heard of RCW 8908. Okay, all right, so this is the enabling legislation that allows for the creation of conservation districts. It passed in 1939 in the state of Washington, and it allows us to exist, and it says what all of our rules are under state law. Washington Association of Employees, if you've not heard of that, get up and, no, I'm joking. Here, this is it. We are Washington Association of Conservation Districts. So oftentimes WADE, us, is referred to as the Employees Association, and oftentimes WACD is referred to as the Supervisors. So the supervisor, the 5 voting supervisors of each conservation district, are voting members of WACD, and each district is a member of WACD. National Conservation District Employees Association, just like us, the national level. It's pretty straightforward. National Association of Conservation District, same thing as the state association, but at a national level. Conservation Commission. Washington State Conservation Commission is the small state agency that was created also in RCW 8908. They are the quote small agency, and you know, like Sean rattled off all the employees, and it is a big number compared to even just 4 or 5 years ago. it is still a small agency. You know, it's not DNR, it's not Fish and Wildlife, it's not ecology. It is still a small agency, and they do great things. Natural Resources Conservation Service, our longest and most traditional partner, putting conservation on the ground. So those are the big ones. All right, so the history. Dust Bowl. Bad times, right? Federal government's trying to figure out, okay, how do we deal with this guy named Hugh Hammond Bennett? He is the father of soil conservation in the United States, and he helped Congress and the president at the time put together the Soil Stabilization Service, which became the Soil Conservation Service, which then in the 1990s, became the Natural Resources Conservation Service. But when they first created that agency, and those agents, and they were called agents, by the way, which I mean, they quickly learned they had to change that name because that just doesn't sound like it. You know, still this time in the time of Bonnie and Clyde, you know. Anyways, they would go out on the landscape and try to tell farmers, well, you should be doing this, or you don't do that, and that kind of stuff. And they didn't get very good positive reception. And you know, so this guy Hugh Hammond Bennett had some conversations with folks, you know, at the local level and everything else. And really, what it was here was, you know, we don't trust you. There's nobody to trust you. You haven't essentially been vetted. And so they came up with this idea of having local sponsors, if you will. And he came up with the idea of conservation, a local board of farmers and ranchers and producers, landowners, to basically work with those federal agents and give them buy-in into the community. And so Congress was being pushed to basically come up with a strategy to enroll, to get states to develop conservation. And Hugh Hammond Bennett famously was presenting to a Senate hearing. And this is still during the Dust Bowl, and he had been watching weather reports and knew that there was a dust storm blowing across the country. And he timed it. He convinced the chairman of the committee to delay the meeting in the afternoon. And in the middle of his presentation, he walks over, he opens the windows, and dust just comes blowing into the room. And he said, "This is Kansas. This is why we need to take care of this. We need to take care of our soil and the where it's supposed to be." And so they quickly passed legislation that basically said states can get this federal resource that, you know, is now the NRCS, but only if they allow for the creation of conservation districts. They don't have to create it, they have to at least allow it. So states started passing left and right because we're in the depression, we're in the Dust Bowl, we're dealing with all these problems. They started passing this legislation. Our state passed it in 1939. District started forming that very same year. And we've been going gangbusters ever since. So that's kind of where all of that came from. So the conservation district function, I will paraphrase what you're welcome to read it, but it's basically to take all available resources and bring them to bear on the highest priority natural resource concern for your area. So that's where your board sits down with partners and with each other, with staff, and says, what is our number one priority? What is the greatest resource concern in our community? Is it soil health? Is it water quality? Is it forest health? What are those issues? And specifically, what needs to be done? And then what are the resources that we can bring ourselves? And what does NRCS have? What does DNR have? What does ecology have? Who has what resources? County, you name it. And they start trying to put together a program to best address those resource concerns. So, yeah. Okay, so some of this is taken right out of the person. Like the section of, there's probably a couple of RMs, or maybe Mike could probably tell you what some of them are, but our purpose is to conserve natural resources. And like I said, our enabling legislation, the authorities that districts and supervisors can do, it's very long. We can do studies and all sorts of crazy things, and it's all focused on trying to make sure that we conserve our natural resources for later use. Mr. Code.
Beyond conservation, giving the unique to us, anybody else use it. You're also trying to get and protection.
Yeah,
we can handle it.
Yeah, Mike is right. So conservation districts, you know, we're known as conservation, you know, conserving soil and water and plants and wildlife for future generations. But we're also there for protection and providing a lot of other services to landowners. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. So there really is almost no limit on what we can do when it comes to natural resource conservation and preservation and protection and enhancement. So, okay. Yeah, so this section basically stipulates that conservation districts are government, we are local government formed under state law. We will, the board has public authorities, has the ability to, employ staff and do all of the things that government can do. So this is a very broad section, but it basically establishes that we are government. A lot of people get us confused. They think we're a nonprofit or they think we're a federal agency or whatever. We are a subdivision of state government at the local county level, or at the local. Okay, so this is you see the part one, this gets to that whole long list, and this is not an exhaustive list of everything that is in 8908. But I think it's really important for us to understand what are the things that districts can do. You know, when you're out working with a landowner or somebody comes in through the door, you know, a local resident, and you know, they want to know, can you help me with this? This begins to tell you that probably if it has to do with natural resources, you could. Now it's up to your district whether that's a priority and you want to spend that time and effort on it. But this is just some of the things that are included in that long list. Mike, what is the 8908 200?
210.
210, thank you, sir.
This, all those things.
220. The two mics, the dueling mics. I like it. 220. It's one of the 200 ones, or low 200. Couple of really key things here. So it says prepare an annual work plan and prepare and keep a current comprehensive long-range program. So those are two really key things. Each year, the commission requires districts to submit our annual work plan to them. That basically stipulates these are the things we're going to be working on for the next 12 months, beginning July 1. At least once every 5 years, we have to submit a long-range plan, which is obviously then a longer range. It's a 5-year work plan. In the next 5 years, these are going to be our priorities. And those are really critical. So for me, my district, and our employees, these are really critical documents, because when a landowner comes in, can you help us with this? If it's in that list, if it's in those plans, I don't have to wait for a board meeting to go ask the board, can I help this person? If we have the resources and time and the energy and the authority, and it's in this plan, we have the green light already, because the board has said, this is our priority. Now that's my district. That may not be yours, but that's how mine works. So they can be very powerful in helping you deliver services quicker and more efficient. Yeah. Hold public hearings, administer any project or program concerned with the conservation of renewable natural resources. Doesn't get a heck of a lot broader than that. I had an argument once upon a time. There's a section in this group about making plant materials and grass seed available for landowners at whatever, basically under whatever rules or guidelines that our board chooses, right? And our district, we would get trees from the Forest Service. They would do their spring planting and they would have surplus trees left over. I mean, like tens of thousands of trees left over. And they would just take them out back behind the ranger station and pile them up and burn them because they're not allowed to give them away. These are trees you and I have paid for. And we were like, we can give them away. Can you give them to us? Well, it turns out, yeah, they can give them to another governmental entity. All right, you bring them to our office, we will distribute them. So we did. So we started doing that. Then if state auditors, you can't do that. That's a gift of public funds. We didn't pay for them. They're like, but it's a property. You have taken possession of it. It's your property. Okay. So we stopped for a year or two until I found that section in 8908 to whatever it is. And I showed it to the auditor the next time they came in and they were like, yeah, you can give them away. Like, rock on, let's do this. Go get the trees. So understand your roles and responsibilities and your authorities are. They can help you be able to deliver those programs. All right, so I'm starting with what district supervisors. I know we're employees. Are there any supervisors in the room before I talk bad? No, I don't. I love my supervisor. But their authorities become our authorities. Whatever they are allowed to do under state law, they can transfer to us to do. they can authorize us to do, to act on their behalf. So remember, they are public officials, which means, guess what? We are all public officials, and there are things in state statute that relate to that. You should know them. I'm not going to go into them because I'm not an expert and I'm not an attorney and I don't even play one on TV. I played a football coach once though. So yeah, you know. Supervisors may employ staff. Thank you very much. We appreciate our paychecks. Thank you. And we appreciate doing what we do. Shall determine staff duties and compensation. Seems fair. May delegate authority. Again, may tell us we got to go do this stuff, right? Shall provide records of all proceedings. This is called board meeting minutes. Fun things. People, if you haven't had a chance to take the minutes for a board meeting, volunteer to do that once and just knock everybody's socks off. It's fun. It's fun. It's good. It's a good time. Yeah. Shall provide for an annual audit. They shall serve without compensation. And this is the part that is just incredible to me. We have one supervisor this year, not my district, but one in this state, who is going to hit their 50th anniversary on the board. 50 years times 12 board meetings a year, they have volunteered. They have another supervisor in the same general area that is hitting 49. This is a lifetime passion. Now, some will say, well, they've been in office too long. Maybe, but you will be hard pressed to find anybody that's more committed or more knowledgeable on natural resources and conservation in their area. District supervisors shall not levy taxes or issue bonds. We cannot do those things. So many districts, well, a dozen-ish, dozen and a half, have rates and charges programs which collect local rates and charges, which are kind of like taxes. They're not, they're kind of like them. We don't have the authority to do that. The county legislative authority has the authority to levy these. They do it on our behalf. Okay, so what's their commitment? Term of office currently is 3 years. 12 regularly scheduled board meetings for most districts. There's a few districts that take a month or two off here or there for harvest or planting. This is more common for their area. Committee and special meetings. Some districts have them, some don't, some have them, but meet infrequently, etc. WACD area and annual meetings. So WACD, the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, 6 areas. Each area has a meeting every fall. And then there is a subsequent annual meeting for all of the areas to gather and talk. So not all district supervisors participate in those. Many do, and it's quite likely employees do too. So you might get invited to go to those. And then there's National CD Association meetings. There's, again, area meetings. We're in the Pacific region. I couldn't quite convince my board to send me to the meeting that was in Guam a couple of years ago. It seemed like a really fun place to go. A couple of years before that, it's actually, or maybe it's this year it's in Tahoe. Last year it was in Hawaii. I missed that one too. What is it? Anyways, estimated average is 20 days a year. So remember, again, they're serving without compensation. So 20 days. So natural resource conservation can get put on the ground at the local level. So, district employees, an orientation session should be right there at the top of the list in the first week or so. Sooner better is better than later. Job description should be clearly written. You should know what your job description is and what is expected of you. We're getting better at that. 20 years ago, this was not so great. And there's probably still a lot of also, you should be working with your supervisors. That's your direct employee supervisor and or possibly the board in planning out your workload, especially in relation to partners. I have NRCS listed here. Again, this was done a long time ago when like NRCS was almost the exclusive partner of district. And now it's like, who is that? So, but regardless of who that partner is, really looking at what your workload is and how that interacts with what you're doing and what your work does as far as interacting with areas. And you should have regular performance reviews. This is for you and for their benefit. So a minimum of once a year when they should occur. Supervisors set the overall direction for employees. As far as, kind of what your priorities are. All right, you were hired to work on this stuff for water quality stuff. But you know what? We have funding and project needs over here on this education stuff. I need you to go give some presentations. Okay, they're setting that direction. Yeah, it's a shift from what you thought, but they're the ones that are setting that direction. Let's see. Oftentimes in a lot of districts, there is a board member, a supervisor that is identified as the kind of point person for the employees, like there's problems or whatever else. Should know who that is if you have one. Not all districts do. But there's some districts that, employees don't talk to the board members unless they're spoken to or whatever. Every district there's 45 districts and there's 46 ways that we're running the state. So it's just it really does differ. So get to know what your district is. If you don't know, ask. It's a perfectly reasonable, expected question to ask. All right. So your role, understand your district's mission. How many of you have read at least your district? I used to ask how many have it memorized, but how many of you have read your district's mission statement? Mike, you wrote yours. Cool. All right. Provide a link between cooperators and board. So you are working directly with your cooperators, the landowners, the residents, the farmers, the ranchers, the forest owners, the whomevers, your customers. I like to call them cooperators because it's a partnership. We're working together on these things. You're working with them daily, weekly, monthly. Your supervisors may not. The things that they are having problems with, that they're struggling with, that they need help with, those are the things that you need to make sure are conveyed to the board. Do you need to tell them every stinking detail? Probably not. But they should have a pretty good sense that, hey, I work with 3 landowners and they're all having problems with X. The common problem. That's something that needs to be raised because there might be something that can be done about it that is at a level higher than what you're at. Maybe you'll get there someday. Hopefully you will, but that's what they're there for. Okay. Be a source of technical knowledge for cooperators. Now, I know not all of you are planners or technicians or whatever, okay, but that could be being the source of technical knowledge for if you're the finance person and you need to know exactly what forms are filed when, with what agencies and what partners at what times. That's what that's talking about. If you're the educator for your district, knowing how certain programs work and are meeting certain education standards, that's providing that technical knowledge. Be the source of knowledge that's necessary for the position which you hold. Just work cooperatively with partners to implement. I mean, this is kind of like, this is why you were hired, right? This is the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes. This is it, okay? But work cooperatively, okay? Not every day is going to go your way. It happens. Probably had a couple of bad days myself, in the last, 20 years. 1 or 2. Don't hesitate to ask for assistance. I've even asked Mike Tobin for assistance, and he has graciously and generously offered it every time. Every day, and I love him for it. If Mike says do this, I know to question it and possibly do just the opposite, but that's okay because that's how we work. Okay, we love each other. But so to give you a little, real quick, story. So our district had a massive wildfire. I believe technically, I think it's still listed as the state's largest wildfire, at least, in this century. 2014, we had the Carlton Complex fire. And, in a matter of like 21 hours or something like that, it burned 170,000 acres, burned 300 homes. It was a massive impact to us. And I reached out to districts and said, look, we're going to need some help. I need some people to come help. Just talk to landowners and find out what's missing, what needs, what are the, post-fire problems, resource concerns, et cetera. And over the period of so that was in July, between July and November, we had something like 12 different conservation districts send employees. And we had over 25 different employees from 12 different conservation districts over that period of time come help us meet that need for those landowners. I will forever be grateful to all those districts because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have been able to provide that service to those landlords, and they are eternally grateful as well. So reach out to other districts, reach out to your coworkers, reach out to your partners. Don't be afraid to ask for help. All right, so I like to put this one number one, know your chain of command. Who is your direct supervisor? And can Joe or Susie over here give me jobs to do? Is that okay? If so, now if their jobs that they gave me conflict with what my supervisor, or Bill, or Barbara, or whoever gave me, who decides which one is done first? Know that. Understand that. That just keep yourself out of trouble, but also to make sure they don't get upset. Always be looking for the next project. This is, Ken Bevis talked about this today. This is the ought to. Hey, we ought to be doing something with that landlord. We have resources. We ought to be providing that to those people. This is the cornerstone of why districts have had success. We've had better success at seeing that and understanding that and helping landowners hit that because we ought to. Okay? Cooperator relationships, super critical, super critical. You know, our cooperators, they may not walk on water, but we better treat them with the utmost sincerity, respect, courtesy, and just appreciation because they are our customers. We are a service organization. They are our customers. Yes, we are there to conserve natural resources, but we do that through the cooperators. We do it through their hand. So respect them, appreciate them, and trust me, your life will be so much better. Be ethical. I shouldn't have to say this, but you know, it seems like everybody has to say it. And trust me, it's been in there for 20 years, so it's not like a new thing. But you know, just be honest. You made a mistake. I'm sorry. You know, I once bought a vehicle without authorization from my board, and let me tell you, going to the board with the hat in hand, and you know, asking for forgiveness and hoping I didn't get fired. That was a pretty stressful time, but I fessed up to my mistake. I kind of took it as I had authorization. I did not. So be a good steward of public funds. Don't go buy a truck you're not authorized to buy, okay? Spending public dollars is what we do. You have to accept that. But doing it efficiently is what we do really well. Districts do that really well. We put maximum amount of dollars on the ground in cost share, technical assistance. We don't drive, you know, the fanciest trucks or the coolest things, you know. A great day is because, you know, there was a little bit extra money left in the commission funds at the end of the biennium and we got a new computer. But we're using our resources to the maximum extent possible. And, you know, it is, I believe that this is born from how we were born, which is from the Depression, from the Dust Bowl, and having to be resourceful. So continue that. All right. So I'm going to go through these really quick because I think I'm running out of time, aren't I? I'm getting close. So the District Employees Association, I know you're all new. Oh, I meant to ask, how many of you have been on the job for less than 1 month? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you have been on the job for less than 2 weeks? Are any of you here on your first day of work? There. I told you. I was talking to you guys. I told you. Welcome. Almost every year I get at least one. So yeah, I mean, what a way to start. I mean, you know, you're driving those. Well, you know, yeah, hopefully the rest of it goes just as good as this stuff does. So. All right, so we were created to help promote professional development, okay? We were kind of like the precursor to CTD, but it was a broad range of topics. We are, it's not on here, but we're not a union. We don't necessarily support or oppose unions. That's not our thing. We are here to provide training, make sure that you guys can go back and deliver better service to your customers and to your boards, to your district. One of our, so there's a 7-member board. Cindy mentioned it earlier. I'm currently the vice president. Cindy Pierce is the president. I'm not going to list them all, but there are 7 members. Any one of you that are a district employee can serve in one of those roles. The president of our board is a voting member of the Washington Association of Conservation Districts. They have a 19-member board. It's a big one. And we have one vote at that, which is huge because back when I started, employees did not. You know, it was a different relationship, and it has come a long ways. Our boards and our supervisors, they really respect and appreciate what we do because they recognize us as the professionals that we are. And so that respect that they show us was earned and is continued to be maintained because we continue to do the really good work. When we have our meetings, y'all get a vote. So like when we do elections on Wednesday morning, you all can vote. You can be the next president Wednesday. You don't have to have been here for a year. You don't have to be, you know, it's not like the US president. You don't have to be 35 years old or any of that stuff. You can do this. So, oh yeah, and we do training too. Yeah, like it's an afterthought or something. Oh yeah, anyways, okay. So Center for Technical Development was already mentioned today. Do a lot of conservation planner training and other very much more technical in-depth training. They get really into the weeds on things, which is excellent. Something that we've all been trying to like get to, and they picked it up and ran with it and have done an amazing job. They also help us assess the training needs for CD employees and helping to kind of work that out a little bit with NRCS. For the technical staff, there's a lot of NRCS training that they offer, and they can help get us lined up with those things. And I didn't do you justice, Jan. I'm sorry, but I know that you guys do a whole lot more than these 3 bullets, but this was 10 o'clock last night, so that's my excuse. Partners to deploy priority training for opportunities, you know, so working whether it's NRCS or other agencies, making sure that the best possible opportunities for training are available to CD employees. And a lot of times what they're working on is getting seats available so a few CD employees can go sit in on that training. And that's huge, you know, when we're hearing the same thing that other agencies are hearing, it really helps in delivering service to landowners. So we know what they were trained on, so we can explain that to the landowner. All right, Association of CDs. So this is both Washington Association of Conservation Districts and the National Association. They're non-governmental, they're not profit. They provide a combined voice for districts. They pursue legislative and policy activity, and they provide service to local districts. So, for example, the State Association of Conservation Districts, WACD. So one of the things is like when we go to Olympia in January, February, March-ish each year, it varies depending on the year. They help provide information that we can take to talk to our legislators about what are some of the policy issues that are a priority to districts. What are some of the budgetary issues? You know, we really want to push for higher CTA, the Conservation Technical Assistance Funding. This is kind of the messaging. We don't have to stick to it. It's not a script. It's there to help us. It's to guide us. If we stumble and we're not sure what to say, there it is. We can go through that. They even, my district has rates and charges. When we went to ask for ours 15 years ago, 18 years ago, whenever it was, they came from Olympia to Okanogan, which is about a 5-hour drive. If you 4.5 if you're a Leadfoot. And they presented to our county commissioners why rates and charges are so important for districts, that local funding, what it means based on the experience other districts had and the successes they had by having that money. And it was pivotal for our county commissioners to finally kind of get over the hump of, okay, we're going to tax our residents some extra money, you know. So. All right. So this is kind of a upside down triangle or right side triangle. I don't know. So you have individuals at the local level. That's kind of the basis. That's your cooperators, it's your partners, it's all of the other people at the local level that are dealing with natural resources. Then you have a local conservation district, 5 supervisors. In Washington, it's 5. Some states it's a different number, but in Washington, it's 5 supervisors. Then you have area associations for WACD. So there's 6 across the state of Washington. They're by area, you know, northwest area, southwest area, north central, south central, I think. And then that makes up the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, the 45 districts in total, or those 6 areas. And then they are kind of under the umbrella, if you will, of the National Association of Conservation Districts, with almost 3,000 conservation districts across the US and its territories. Really cool to go to NACD and meet conservation district people from Palau. And they talk about being on conference calls and they have to be up at 2 a.m. to make a conference call that's at 4 p.m. the next day. Or the previous, I can't remember. Anyways, which side of the day, timeline on. Yeah, anyways, and it takes them like 2.5 days to travel to the national meeting, you know, and I complain about the 4-hour flight, you know, it's like, oh, shut up, Craig. Okay, yeah. All right, so WAC, some of this is. Okay, yeah, all right, let's talk about the Conservation Commission. Conservation Commission, state agency, 10-member board. So there are 4 state agencies, Ecology, Department of Ag, DNR, and Extension, WSU Extension are the 4 state agency-ish that are on the commission, or it's their directors or their appointees. So technically it'd be like Hillary Franz, who from DNR, she's on the commission board, but it's her appointee. Derek Sanderson from the State Department of Ag is the director of Ag. So he appoints somebody to sit on the commission. So those 4 people are on the commission. Then there are 4 CD people. So one is the president of WACD. The other 3 are elected by area. There's a west area, a central area, and an east area. And then, so that makes up 8 of the 10. The last 2 are governor appointees. Historically, traditionally, one appointee is a tribal representative and one appointee is a environmental group representative. As long as I've been around, that's basically how those have been done. Let's see. So yeah, so they are the one of the big granting sources for a lot of districts. For a few districts, they're probably almost the only granting source. For a few districts, they're probably a very small granting source. For the majority of us, they're a significant granting source, but not the only player in the game for us. They also provide administrative support. You know, our regional managers, you know, if we're like, oh, can we do this? Or how do we do a surplus, say? Well, they provide that support to help explain to us how we do that and not get in trouble with the auditor. That's the key thing. You can do it anything way you want. Go right ahead. You want to just roll up the garage door and say, come on in, 25 cents for whatever, you know, you can do that. Probably going to get in trouble with the auditor's office. The commission will tell you how to do that and not get in trouble with the auditor. Amongst many other things. That's just one. They also help ensure that we do comply with the laws. There's a lot of others too. They ask questions. They help us with our internal audits to make sure that we are complying with all the laws. And they're also the voice for us at the agency level. When there is a natural resource cabinet meeting, the commission is there. They're not part of the main cabinet. They're a sub-agency of the cabinet, but they're there to talk and tell people. When the legislature wants to know, hey, what are districts doing out on the ground? The commission is often who is called in to answer those questions. So they are our voice in a very important group of people and organizations. So, and they're pretty cool people too. I just gotta say. And I'm not saying that just to curry favor with them, although I am also trying to curry favor with them. So, NRCS. So I mentioned earlier today, the chief of the NRCS is going to be here tomorrow morning. That's a pretty cool deal. To my knowledge, the chief of the NRCS has never been to a Washington Association of District Employee Training. We were trying to get them here today so they could be here in front of, but you know, using my Facebook Messenger app with our state conservationist, I couldn't convince her to get him here today. Yeah, he could be here later tonight, but I didn't think we really wanted to meet at 6 o'clock tonight. Yes. That's the national head. So this person reports to the Undersecretary of Agriculture for Natural Resources, who reports to the Secretary of Agriculture. So Chief Crosby, he's been the chief for, I don't know, 3 years-ish, 2-3 years, something like that. Not a terribly long time. They typically don't last a very long time. It's, you know, are the chiefs political appointees? I know state cons aren't, and the area conservation, I don't know. Maybe somebody else knows. I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, so yeah, so he is here in Washington for various things, this being one, stop on his tour. And he'll be here in the morning, so. So yeah, if you get a chance, go meet him, hear what he has to say, ask a few questions, put screws to it, I would. So they implement most Farm Bill, the conservation title of the Farm Bill is massive. It includes like free and reduced school lunches too, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows that, but it also includes things like EQIP, the conservation title, or CSP and some of those. They are non-regulatory, just like conservation districts. They're the keeper of the field office technical guide, or see, this is how old this is. This doesn't say EPOTOP. Yeah, see, so Mike knows. So when I started at the Okanogan Conservation District and I walk into the office for the first time, walk in, and there in front of me, about as far as that wall is 4 or 5, I think, bookcases. About this wide, about that tall, and it's filled with 3-ring binders. That was the field office technical guide. That was all, it was the Bible. It's the Bible. If you don't know how to do something, it is in there. And if it's not in there, it was not meant to be. Come up with a different plan. That's kind of how it was done, right? Either that or find an engineer that was willing to go out on a limb. That was another option. So, and they are a critical CD partner. I know not all districts are co-located with NRCS. And, you know, when I first started, you could not tell from one desk to the next who was a district employee or who was an NRCS employee. About a year after I started, I was intermixed with NRCS. About a year after I started, you could tell who the CD was versus the NRCS because we finally got our computers on our desk. They had one share amongst 5 of them. They've always kind of been a little bit behind on that side of the technology stuff. But they have been our absolute most key partner in getting conservation on the ground. So oftentimes for many years and still to this day, in a lot of cases, districts have tried to implement projects and programs to fill in the gaps that NRCS just can't do. So I'm going to skip this slide. That's so. And your local office, you might have a resource conservationist or a district conservationist. There's where the chief is. Give you an idea of who's coming. So we will have state conservationists, our regional conservationists, Asper Boozer, and the chief. Asper's been in his job for it's at least 10 years. Because he was Asper Boozer, he's the area conservationist, regional conservation, excuse me. He's been in because he came and visited us after the Carlton fire. So my understanding is that he's coming to, I think so. I was told by a certain state conservationist that I would get the itinerary after it was set 2 weeks ago, and I've not seen it yet. So, but in that conversation, there was a discussion that Asper was going to be part of it too. So, anyway, so yeah, so you might get 3 tomorrow. So yeah, Mike's salivating back there. He's got a list of questions longer than his arm. Okay, yeah. So this is just real quick. Understand what your relationship is with NRCS. Talk to your fellow conservation district folks. You know, how is it that you work and interact with NRCS? What's the deal there? So that's really what this one boils down to. Okay, so how do CDs work? So you take all these, you know, resource needs, state and federal laws, local ordinances, available resource users. Those all go into the process of planning. Okay, so, and then planning becomes the conservation district program. And by planning, I'm not necessarily talking about, well, this covers both. This covers both like a conservation plan as well as a annual or long range. Okay, so all of the things that are around that box kind of inform and educate what it is that you are going to be working on or what the landowner is going to implement. And then that becomes the service to land occupiers or cooperators, landowners. Yeah, there's a list of names that you could use for the people that we work with, our customers. So, okay. This is one that is really big and confusing, but this is just basically to stress that in the world of natural resource conservation, districts are a hub of a wheel. Because we are bringing resources in or providing resources to all of these various entities all the way around. And we're using those to our best advantage, getting back to that very beginning, one of those very first slides I had, of bringing all available resources to bear on the highest priority. This is how we do it. We work within all of these things to do that. All right. So you're here at weight training. What are you hoping to get out of this? So have a plan, have gone through the agenda. If you haven't, go through it tonight, spend a few minutes, kind of plot out your course, okay? All right, if you're a riparian planner, that doesn't mean you have to stay in riparian the whole time, although I'm sure the folks that planned that session would love for you to stay there all day. They would love that, okay? But you don't have to. Maybe there's a GIS course that you want to take, or there's something in forestry or something else. It's okay to bounce from class or from session to session or track to track. But have a plan, have a purpose. What is it that you need the most in the next 12 to 18 months to better do your job? Go to those sessions. Actively participate, ask questions, throw out suggestions, be an active participant. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. Listen to experienced employees, like my good friend Mike, and there's many others that are here. Ryan, also sitting back there. He's been around the block. He's worked, what, 3 CDs now? 3. I mean, shoot, yeah, he's got the hopscotch down good. So I'm hoping that where he's landed most recently, he'll stay. But it's not just because some of us, I'm pointing at myself, are old and been here too long. But we've got a little bit of experience, and we would love to teach that to you because we want you to be able to pick up what we know and go to that next level, go beyond. Engage in social opportunities. This is not a free use license to the grotto, although I hope to see you all at the grotto tomorrow for the Envirothon trivia, because it is a blast. It is hilarious. It's fun. It's a rocking good time. But okay. All right. Game on, man. Game on. But just be active and engaged in those. Go to lawn games tonight. Go hang out. Go meet a few folks. Talk to somebody that has your job at another district. What do they do? How do they do that work? Get that information. Yeah. Excellent question. So what does the Envirothon funding buy-in go towards? So that money goes to Washington State Envirothon, and they use that money primarily to help cover some of the travel costs. Like the team this year is going to New Brunswick. I don't know if anybody's priced tickets from Washington State to New Brunswick, Canada recently, but they are not inexpensive. And so they use them for those types of things, those costs. The state Envirothon and local Envirothons are fairly well, not greatly funded by the commission and districts, but primarily funded by that. But that expense to get classes to those areas. I don't know about this year's class, but I know a few years ago, there was a team that, pretty much all 5 members, they had to go get a passport. And oh, by the way, you need it in 2 months. So that means you have to pay the extra fees to get it fast and everything. It was things like that to be able to help those kids to be able to go to those things. So, but great question. Thank you. Be a sponge, soak it up, take it all in. Experience. And I do that to this day. Mike and I have been coming here for longer than we care to admit. And to this day, it's still be a sponge, soak it up. We're learning new things every time. And report it back to your CD. Go back next week, maybe Thursday this week, but sometime soon. Talk to your coworkers, talk to your board members and say, this is what I learned. This is why it was so cool. This is how the food was, whatever, okay? All right, but report back. Tell them about what was great, what you'd like to see improved. That's great too. We want to hear that. We want to make next year better than this. All right. I don't want to hold anybody from dinner. It is 5:59. Questions? I'm here to answer questions, but if you guys want to take off, go get food, go get food. Yes, sir.
Okay, before you go on ladies, those are thinking out, you're gonna have laps in the morning.
Yeah.
describe WACP, you describe districts, you describe what the state conservation. Your family. That is important as you progress through your career. There is no adversarial issue here. We are together in this. Another thing he mentioned or alluded to as new employees, how many might have been employed the restoration specialist? So when you're working with a landowner, these two right here, you will encounter opportunities. Say, how do we protect this riparian area? We do it by exclusionary fences. We do it with off-site watering, which says, what is this person doing? Well, they have a cattle calf lawn operation. They'll need downspouts on your water quality, which might be the person within your district. Always be looking for that next program. We're a part of the system that is integrated. Each and every one of you. By God, believe me, the financial people in this room, how many financial people? You need to know this so that you can understand when you're deciphering bills, to make sure they're charged correctly. You are the checks and balances of these people who are doing that work on the ground. You are as integral as anyone else. I'm government. So often, 34 years of experience. I am the government. I show up. There is a distrust. It doesn't matter. There's a distrust. You are better than government. Don't forget that any day of the week. Because once you gain that trust, it'll lead you to the next 4, 5 projects. It'll lead you to the next 20 people in the same watershed by word of mouth, if nothing else. You are more powerful and more important than anyone else out there. Be that position of change. You go back 5 or 3 slides. Right there. Your conservation. Over your career, understand how you overlap each one of those. And you will have an opportunity to influence each one of those things, whether it's a program, whether it's how you outreach to people, or how you get people engaged with your program. You're the next me. Bring it. Be better than me.